A powerful judge. A respected pastor. A wedding that should have been the beginning of forever, turned into a bloodbath just 24 hours later. Why? Because she found out a secret so dark, so twisted, so unspeakable, it cost her life. This isn't just another crime story. This is betrayal in its purest, most horrifying form. A man who preached about faith, loyalty, and righteousness. A woman who dedicated her life to justice, to truth. And a love story that was supposed to be a fairy tale, until she uncovered the one thing that no one, not her, not his congregation, not his closest friends, was ever supposed to know. She walked down the aisle, believing she had found her forever. What she didn't know was that she was walking straight into a death trap. Because behind the carefully crafted mask of a God-fearing man, her new husband, the pastor, was hiding a secret affair. A love so forbidden, so damning, that if it ever got out, his entire world would come crashing down. And that's exactly what happened. The moment Judge Cassandra Lewis learned the truth, she was living on borrowed time. She threatened to expose him. He begged her to stay quiet. But Cassandra wasn't the kind of woman to be silenced. She was a judge. A woman of the law. A seeker of truth. And for that, she had to die. A murder that was supposed to look like a burglary gone wrong. A husband-turned-killer standing at the pulpit just hours before he took his own wife's life. A chilling crime that shook an entire community to its core. But the truth never stays buried. And tonight, we're unraveling the shocking, unbelievable, and heartbreaking story of how a wedding night turned into a crime scene, and how one woman's search for the truth led her straight to her own execution. This is shocking true crime exposed, and if you think you've heard it all, trust me, you haven't. If you love diving deep into the most jaw-dropping, twisted, and unforgettable true crime stories, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because this one, it's gonna stay with you long after it's over. Cassandra Lewis wasn't just another judge. She was a force of nature, sharp, fearless, and unwavering in her pursuit of truth. In the courtroom, she was respected and feared in equal measure. Lawyers prepared extra hard when they knew their case would be heard in her courtroom, because Cassandra didn't just listen, she examined. She didn't just rule, she delivered justice. Her colleagues described her as unshakable, the kind of woman who could stare down a liar and break them apart with nothing but silence. Outside of work, though, Cassandra was soft, warm, and deeply loyal to the people she loved. She wasn't just a judge, she was a daughter, a best friend, a mentor to many young women trying to make it in the world of law. But for all her success, for all the battles she won in the courtroom, there was one battle she never quite conquered: love. Cassandra had been single for years. Not because she didn't want companionship, but because she had spent so much time climbing the ladder of success that love always seemed like something that could wait. And then, when she was finally ready, she found herself in a world where good men seemed harder to find. She wanted a partner, not someone intimidated by her strength, but someone who would stand beside her, not behind her. And then came David Carter. At first glance, Pastor David Carter was everything Cassandra had been waiting for. Handsome. Charismatic. A man of God. He had a voice that could fill a room, a smile that could melt away doubt, and a reputation that was as pristine as the white robes he wore every Sunday. David was deeply loved by his congregation, a leader who preached about family, morality, and faith. He had built an empire from the pulpit, with thousands hanging onto his every word, believing he was the kind of man who could do no wrong. But David was living a lie. His entire world, his church, his followers, his marriage, was built on a foundation of deception. Because while he stood before his congregation, delivering sermons about the sanctity of marriage and the importance of truth, he was hiding a secret that could destroy everything. David Carter was not the faithful, God-fearing husband he pretended to be. And the person who knew this secret best. His secret lover. He was younger, charming, and completely hidden from the world David pretended to belong to. For years, they had been together in the dark, sneaking around, exchanging whispers in the late hours of the night, existing in a love that could never be spoken of. David had told him over and over, "I can't let anyone find out. I would lose everything. No one would ever understand." But secrets like this? They don't stay hidden forever. And now, with Cassandra in the picture, with a new marriage, a new life, the walls of David's carefully constructed double life were beginning to close in. There was only one way out. Cassandra's best friend knew something wasn't right. She had been by Cassandra's side for years, through late nights in law school, through the tough cases, through the heartbreaks that came before. She had never seen Cassandra rush into anything before. So when Cassandra told her about David, about how fast things were moving, about how she was getting married so soon, it raised red flags. "Are you sure about this?" she had asked. "You barely know him." But Cassandra was in love. She was happy. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she had someone to share her life with. What she didn't know was that she was sharing her life with a man who had been living a lie for years. And in just 24 hours, that lie would come crashing down, in the most horrifying way imaginable. The wedding was nothing short of a fairy tale. The venue? A grand cathedral, its towering stained-glass windows casting colorful reflections onto the polished marble floors. White roses lined the aisles, their soft petals carrying the scent of new beginnings. The air buzzed with laughter, whispered blessings, and the sound of champagne glasses clinking in celebration. Judge Cassandra Lewis had never looked more radiant. Dressed in an elegant, off-the-shoulder gown, she walked down the aisle with grace, her eyes locked on the man she believed would stand beside her for the rest of her life. Pastor David Carter stood at the altar, a polished figure of strength and devotion. His suit was crisp, his smile warm, his words delivered with the confidence of a man deeply rooted in faith. For their guests, the fellow judges, high-ranking officials, respected pastors, and an entire congregation of believers, this was a wedding that symbolized power, faith, and love united. But behind the perfectly orchestrated ceremony, behind the well-rehearsed vows and the gentle squeeze of hands at the altar, lay a truth so dangerous, so unspeakable, that it was only a matter of time before it surfaced. And when it did, it would shatter everything. The reception stretched into the night. Laughter. Music. Dancing. Cassandra's heart felt full. This was it, the beginning of her forever. But then, her phone buzzed. She almost ignored it at first. After all, it was her wedding night. Who would be texting her now? But something made her look. A single anonymous message. No greeting. No explanation. Just 5 haunting words. Ask him the truth. Run. Beneath it? An attachment. Her breath caught in her throat as she opened it. And in that moment, her world stopped. The screen illuminated a grainy photo. Her new husband. David Carter. Not in a church. Not behind a pulpit. But in a bed. With another man. Their bodies intertwined. The intimacy of the moment undeniable. The very foundation of her marriage, her trust, her entire future, crumbling before her eyes. Her stomach twisted. Was this real? Could this be some kind of cruel joke? Her hands trembled as she scrolled further. More photos. More messages. It wasn't just a single mistake. This was an affair. A long, hidden life that David had kept locked away. And now, she was the last to know. Cassandra was never the kind of woman to stay silent. And tonight, her wedding night, was no exception. The moment the last guest left, she confronted him. The newlyweds were in their luxurious honeymoon suite, a room filled with candles, fresh linens, and champagne that had been untouched. David had been smiling just moments before, his guard down, his arms loose as he began unbuttoning his shirt. But then he saw her face. She stood in the doorway, her phone clenched in her hand, her knuckles white. "What's wrong?" His voice was casual, but there was an edge to it. Cassandra didn't answer. She simply turned the screen toward him. The room fell into a suffocating silence. For the first time that night, David Carter had no words. Cassandra's voice was low, controlled, but beneath it, rage, disbelief, betrayal. "Who is he?" she asked. David blinked. Swallowed hard. "Where did you get that?" His voice was tight now. "Answer me." He shook his head, his eyes darting away, looking anywhere but at her. "It's nothing. It's fake. Someone's trying to ruin us." But Cassandra knew how to read people. She had spent her life exposing liars, tearing apart stories built on deception. And right now, she was staring at the biggest liar of them all. "Don't lie to me, David. Not now. Not after everything." Her voice cracked, but her stance was firm. He exhaled sharply, rubbing his face, his posture shifting. "You don't understand," he muttered. "It's not what you think." But it was exactly what she thought. She had been deceived. Trapped in a web of lies, paraded around like the perfect wife to the perfect husband, while behind the scenes, David Carter had been living a double life. And the worst part? She wasn't the only one who knew. The text. The warning. Someone else was watching, too. And now, her life depended on what she did next. "I'm leaving," Cassandra whispered. The words hit David like a gunshot. His entire image, his church, his followers, his reputation, his entire identity, depended on her silence. And now, she was threatening to take it all away. "Cassandra, please. Let's talk about this." But she had already turned, grabbing her purse, reaching for the door. "I'm going to the police, David. You lied to me. You lied to everyone. You built a life on lies, and I won't be a part of it." His breath hitched. His face twisted. And then, something shifted. The charm, the desperation, all of it vanished. His jaw clenched. His hands curled into fists. His entire posture darkened. And then, the first flash of rage. "You're not going anywhere." The voice that had once delivered sermons, spoken vows, comforted an entire congregation, now dripped with something lethal. Something that sent a chill down Cassandra's spine. She had spent her entire life fighting for justice. But tonight, justice wouldn't come fast enough. Because in just a few short hours, Judge Cassandra Lewis, the woman who fought for truth, for fairness, for everything good and right, would be dead. And the man who swore to love her forever would be the one to kill her. Cassandra Lewis had spent her entire career searching for the truth. She had put criminals behind bars, shattered airtight alibis, and stripped away deception layer by layer until only the cold, hard facts remained. And now, on the night of her own wedding, she found herself standing in the dimly lit honeymoon suite, confronting the biggest lie of her life. Her hands were still shaking. Not from fear, not yet, but from pure rage. She had given this man her heart. She had promised to spend the rest of her life with him, to build something real and unshakable. And yet, here she was, staring at photo proof that it had all been a lie. David stood across from her, his jaw tight, his hands gripping the edge of the dresser as if holding himself together. His silence was deafening. "Say something." Cassandra's voice was raw, demanding. "Say something, David." For a long moment, he didn't. And then, in a voice that was barely above a whisper, he said it. "It's true." Cassandra blinked. "What?" David lifted his head. His face was ashen, drained of color. His breathing was unsteady. "It's true," he repeated. "All of it." The words hung in the air between them, suffocating and heavy. A confession. A truth so dangerous, so damning, that even speaking it out loud seemed to shatter something within him. He admitted it all. The affair. The double life. The years of deception. The man in the photos wasn't some one-time mistake, some secret fling he regretted. No. He was someone David loved. A younger man from his congregation. Someone who had been there all along, lurking in the background of his carefully curated life. "I didn't want this to happen," David murmured, his voice strained. "I never wanted to hurt you, Cassandra." But Cassandra wasn't buying it. "You didn't want to hurt me," she repeated, incredulous. She let out a short, humorless laugh. "You married me, David. You stood before God and lied. Do you understand that?" David turned away, rubbing his face. He looked small now, shrinking under the weight of his own sins. "I thought I could fix it," he muttered. "I thought if I married you, if I focused on the church, if you just buried it." Cassandra snapped. "If you just pretended it wasn't real?" David squeezed his eyes shut. He had spent years pretending. Pretending to be the perfect pastor, the perfect role model, the perfect man of God. But Cassandra had unraveled him in one night. And now, everything was on the line. Cassandra took a deep breath. Her world was spinning, but she was still a judge. Still a woman who fought for truth, no matter how painful it was. She stepped forward, her voice low and steady. "You have one choice, David." His eyes snapped up. "You step down from the church. You admit everything, publicly. You tell them the truth." His mouth fell open. "What?" His voice was sharp now, panic creeping in. "This isn't just about me, David. This is about every single person you've lied to. Every person who looks up to you, who trusts you. This is about the man in those photos, who you've kept hidden like some dirty secret." David shook his head violently. "Cassandra, no. I can't. I'll lose everything. The church, my reputation, your reputation." Her voice was quiet, but lethal. "That's what you care about right now? After everything?" David was breathing heavily now. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Cassandra, please. Just, let it go." "Let it go," she repeated. Her voice broke. "You're asking me to become part of your lie? To live with this? To stand next to you, smiling, while you keep deceiving everyone?" David's eyes were wild with desperation. "Please," he whispered. But Cassandra had already made her decision. "No." She exhaled. "I won't be part of this. I'm filing for divorce. And if you don't tell the truth, I will." David froze. For a moment, the world stood still. And then, something changed. A darkness crept into his face. The panic? Gone. The desperation? Gone. And in its place, rage. Cassandra saw the shift in his eyes. The moment the begging stopped and the fury took over. David Carter was a man who had spent his entire life controlling narratives. His sermons were crafted. His image was manufactured. His life was built on illusion. And now, with just a few words, Cassandra threatened to burn it all to the ground. "You won't do that," he said flatly. Cassandra met his gaze. Unshaken. "Watch me." Something inside David snapped. One moment, he was standing still. The next, he was moving. Fast. Cassandra barely had time to react before his hands were on her arms, gripping her tightly. "You don't understand." His voice exploded in the room. "You can't do this to me." Cassandra struggled. "Let me go." But his grip only tightened. "Do you have any idea what this will do to me?" he snarled. To the church? To everything I've built? Cassandra's breath came in sharp gasps. For the first time that night, true fear sank in. David wasn't just trying to convince her anymore. He was trying to stop her. By any means necessary. Cassandra wasn't herself the morning after the wedding. Her usual confidence, the sharp, commanding presence she carried in a courtroom, was gone. Instead, she was quiet. Withdrawn. Her mind was racing, trying to process everything, the betrayal, the lies, the rage in David's eyes when she told him she would expose him. She had seen anger before. She had sentenced criminals, faced down men who had committed unimaginable acts. But this was different. This was personal. And for the first time in her life, she felt unsafe. She needed space. She needed to think. So she left the house. Security footage from a neighbor's surveillance camera captured Cassandra leaving their home that afternoon. She walked quickly. Purposefully. But not toward a courtroom. Not toward a meeting. She went somewhere she felt safe. Her best friend's house. She told her everything. The photos. The confession. The threats. "I don't think he'll let me leave," she admitted, her voice small. "He's different now. It's like I don't know who I married." Her friend pleaded with her to stay the night, to get away from him, to call the police. But Cassandra shook her head. "No. I need to handle this. I need to talk to him one last time." Her friend didn't know it then, but this would be the last conversation they ever had. Because Cassandra would never leave that house again. That evening, Cassandra returned home. David was waiting for her. The house was silent. Too silent. The once beautiful honeymoon suite, a place meant for love, for new beginnings, was about to become a crime scene. Cassandra walked in cautiously, setting her purse on the kitchen counter. David stood in the bedroom doorway, his figure looming in the dim light. "We need to talk," she said, forcing her voice to stay even. David nodded. "Too calm." "We do." Cassandra stepped forward, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. "I'm filing for divorce, David. I'll give you the chance to tell the truth, but if you don't, I will." David stiffened. And then. "No, Cassandra. You're not doing this." The shift was instant. The calm mask he had been wearing all day cracked apart. Cassandra tried to step back, but he grabbed her wrist, hard. "David, let me go," she yelled, trying to break free. But David wasn't listening anymore. His mind was somewhere else. Somewhere dark. He couldn't let her leave. Couldn't let her tell the truth. Couldn't let everything he built come crashing down. The fight moved fast. Cassandra kicked, shoved, screamed. But David was strong. Stronger than she had ever realized. With one violent shove, he threw her against the nightstand. The impact was brutal, her head smacking against the sharp edge, blood immediately pooling from the wound. She was dazed. That was all he needed. In the moment where her vision blurred, where she tried to push herself up, David made his choice. He reached for the nearest object, a heavy bronze lamp from the bedside table. And then, in one sickening movement, he brought it down onto her head. Once. Twice. Again. And again. Until Cassandra stopped moving. Until the room was silent. Until he was standing over the lifeless body of the woman he had married just 24 hours ago. His hands were shaking. His breathing uneven. But he wasn't done yet. He had to cover this up. David acted fast. He needed a story, one that made him look innocent. He grabbed Cassandra's jewelry box, throwing it to the floor. He knocked over furniture, opened drawers, scattered papers. He shattered a window in the back of the house, making it look like an intruder had broken in. Then, he ran to the bathroom, washed the blood from his hands, changed into a fresh suit. By the time he picked up his phone and dialed 911, his voice was already shaking with carefully rehearsed panic. "Someone broke into my house," he screamed into the receiver. "My wife, oh my God, she's not breathing. I think," he let out a sob, forced the tears. "I think they killed her." It was a perfect lie. A fake crime scene. A pastor turned grieving husband. Everything was set. But David had made one crucial mistake. And that mistake would bring everything crashing down. David thought he had gotten away with it. He thought the police would arrive, take one look at the staged burglary, and write it off as a home invasion gone wrong. But there was something he didn't know. Just hours before Cassandra died, she had already told someone everything. Her best friend knew about the affair. She knew about the threats, the confrontation, the fear in Cassandra's voice. And the moment she heard about Cassandra's death, she went straight to the police. He did this. David Carter killed her. And just like that, the perfect cover-up began to unravel. The moment Cassandra's best friend got the call, she knew. Not a doubt. Not a moment of hesitation. He did this. She had heard the fear in Cassandra's voice just hours before the murder. She had listened as Cassandra confessed the horrifying truth about David's secret life, the confrontation, and the threats. And now, Cassandra was dead. Her body wasn't even cold yet, and David was already playing the grieving husband, feeding the police his well-rehearsed story about a burglary gone wrong. But Cassandra's friend wasn't having it. She went straight to the police and told them everything. The affair. The confrontation. Cassandra's fear that David would never let her leave. And suddenly, the so-called burglary didn't seem so random anymore. At first, police treated it like a robbery homicide. David Carter was a pastor. A man of God. Someone the community respected. It seemed almost unbelievable that he could have done this. But then, the crime scene started to tell a different story. The forced entry looked staged. The broken window was shattered from the inside, not the outside. Cassandra's body position didn't match the struggle David described. None of the valuable items were taken, not her jewelry, not the cash in her purse. Then came the biggest red flag of all. When detectives reviewed the 911 call, they noticed something chilling. David was crying. His voice shook. But in the background, there was silence. Too much silence. No sounds of him checking for a pulse. No sounds of him trying CPR. No real panic. Just a carefully controlled performance. And when investigators listened closely, they could hear his breathing change. Moments before he discovered Cassandra's body, he had been calm. Breathing evenly. Thinking. Then, just before dialing 911, his breathing shifted. Suddenly, he was hyperventilating. Crying. Performing. And that's when detectives knew. This wasn't a burglary. This was murder. David didn't know it yet, but the walls were closing in fast. Because when police seized his phone, they found something that destroyed his alibi in seconds. Thousands of text messages. Not just any messages, messages between David and the secret lover Cassandra had discovered on their wedding night. Detectives dug deeper, recovering deleted conversations. And what they found was damning. She can't find out. I don't know what to do if she does. If she ruins me, I'll have nothing left. Then, just hours before Cassandra's murder, a text from David to his secret lover, "I'll fix this." Police tracked the secret lover down. He was scared. Nervous. But when detectives started pressing, he broke. And what he told them left no doubt. David had confided in him many times. Had told him he feared Cassandra would destroy his career, his church, his entire life. And when Cassandra found out, David panicked. He told his lover, "I can't let her ruin me. I have too much to lose." And now, Cassandra was dead. The lover didn't hold back. He exposed everything. And just like that, David Carter's carefully constructed lie came crumbling down. A pastor on trial for murder. A respected man of faith, revealed to be a cold-blooded killer. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, church members, former friends. Everyone wanted to see how far David's lies would go. The prosecution tore him apart. The staged crime scene. The missing evidence. The phone records. The secret lover's damning testimony. And then, the most shocking moment of all. The prosecutor pulled up the final text Cassandra sent to her best friend. A single message. "If anything happens to me, it was David." The jury went pale. And David? Showed no emotion. No tears. No remorse. Just cold, calculated silence. After 3 weeks of trial, the jury went into deliberation. It took them only 4 hours. The courtroom was dead silent when the judge asked for the verdict. The foreperson stood. "We, the jury, find the defendant, David Carter, guilty of first-degree murder." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. David blinked. Swallowed hard. But still, no emotion. He had spent his entire life controlling how the world saw him. But now, the truth had won. When the judge handed down the sentence, life without parole, David finally reacted. He turned to his attorney and whispered something. No one knows exactly what he said. But some say it sounded like one last, bitter laugh. Cassandra Lewis should have been celebrating her first year of marriage. Instead, her name became a headline. A tragic reminder that secrets kill. David Carter didn't just lose his freedom. He lost everything. His church. His legacy. His double life, exposed for the world to see. In the end, his lies didn't save him. They destroyed him. And Cassandra? She fought for justice until her last breath. Even in death, she won. Betrayal. Lies. Desperation. How far will someone go to protect a lie? How much is a reputation worth? A career? A legacy? For David Carter, the answer was simple: it was worth more than a life. His entire existence was built on a false image, a carefully crafted illusion that made people see him as a man of faith, of integrity, of devotion. But behind the pulpit, behind the Sunday sermons and the perfect smiles, was a man who feared the truth more than he feared God. Because the truth was his undoing. Cassandra wasn't supposed to know. She wasn't supposed to ask questions, to dig, to threaten to expose him. She was supposed to stand beside him, keep his secret, and live in the lie he had so carefully built. But Cassandra wasn't that kind of woman. She lived for truth. She fought for justice. And in the end, it was the truth she found that cost her everything. David Carter preached about family values, morality, and the importance of truth. But when it came time to face his own truth, he killed to keep it buried. This case is a stark reminder of how some people will wear a mask so well, so convincingly, that even those closest to them don't see the cracks until it's too late. It also exposes something even darker, the way power, faith, and deception can intertwine, creating a twisted reality where people are more afraid of being exposed than they are of committing actual crimes. David Carter didn't kill Cassandra in a moment of rage. He killed her because she threatened his existence. Because she had the power to destroy his carefully constructed world with a single truth. And in the end, that fear, the fear of exposure, was stronger than his love, his vows, and his faith. It's easy to say she should have left the moment she found out. But think about it, what if you were in her place? Would you have confronted him? Would you have fought for the truth? Or would you have walked away in silence, knowing what he was capable of? Comment below, what would you have done if you were Cassandra? Would you have exposed him? Would you have stayed silent? Or would you have seen the danger before it was too late? If you found this case as shocking as I did, make sure to subscribe to Shocking True Crime Exposed. Every case we cover is real, twisted, heartbreaking. And if you think this was unbelievable, just wait until you hear what's next. Like, share, join the conversation. And don't forget, the truth always finds a way out. Check out our playlist for more gripping crime stories. This has been Shocking True Crime Exposed. See you in the next one. Stay safe. Stay aware. And always trust your instincts.